Hello, this is Zahirul. Welcome you all on Frankly Speaking. My guest today is Mr. Toumo Poutiainen. He is the country director for the International Labour Organization (ILO) in Bangladesh. He came in Bangladesh last year in June, and he has been working for this organization for 19 years. Previously, Mr. Toumo Poutiainen served in Philippines, Switzerland, Cambodia, Thailand, and he is now in Bangladesh. Over these years, he has been involved in community-based development, child labor, indigenous peoples' issues, livelihoods, promotion, peace, and development initiative. He also works, among other things, on the working condition and labor rights. We welcome Mr. Toumo Poutiainen on Frankly Speaking. Hello.
Thank you, and lovely for you to have me here.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on my show. We know that ILO mark the centenary in 2019. It has already been 100 years have already been passed. So when you created, ILO was created in 1919 after the First World War in Versailles. You chalked out many programs, or you had a vision. After 100 years passed by, 100 years later, when you are looking back as an ILO person, how you look back and how far have you been able, as ILO, have been able to realize its objectives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question. And it is indeed 100-year anniversary of the ILO this year. And we are very proud to look backwards of the organization's history, but we are also very focused looking forwards, because the world and the work is changing. The ILO was created to promote lasting peace, with the idea that it has to be the governments, it has to be the workers, and it has to be the employers who in a joint manner will discuss, will dialogue, and will promote peaceful development of countries. And with Bangladesh, Bangladesh has joined ILO in 1972, so we also have been working a long way with Bangladesh on these very same issues, jobs, development, better futures for young people.
But when you talk about ensuring or achieving lasting peace in the society, or have a social justice in the society, those are the cornerstone or the principle of ILO. Generally, if you look at how far have you been able to achieve the lasting peace?
Obviously, the world history continues to be tumultuous, and there continues to be problems in terms of inequality and political problems and other kind of problems. But we at ILO, we do believe that economic development, which is angled on responsibilities and standards that everybody agrees to, particularly labor standards, make a very big contribution to develop countries in such a manner that everybody can share in the dividends of that growth. No? So we believe that generating decent work, for instance, is a very important means to provide people livelihoods, but also to have social peace and stability.
Mr. Toumo, we know that the ILO they did commission a report on future of work. What does it mean? How you define the future of work? How are you envisioning at the future of work?
So ILO facilitated the establishment of a commission, a global commission on future of work. So this report essentially is not an ILO report, it is a report of that commission. So professors, academics, politicians, representatives from civil society and workers sat together and deliberated, thought through how work is changing.
Different
today.
Stakeholders work for this.
Different stakeholders under the commission were deliberating. The world of work is changing. How does that affect these various organizations and stakeholders and people? And what the commission essentially came up with was that there is a need for a more human-centered development.
Okay.
The development has to be centered on us, on people.
Okay.
And obviously the committee looked into challenges and opportunities. And one challenge that is very much looked in today is the challenge of automation.
Okay.
People talk about fourth industrial revolution.
Exactly, automation, artificial intelligence.
All these things, they are very much, and it sounds a little bit scary in terms of, and the challenge is that there is a sentiment that somehow robots or artificial intelligence will replace people.
Oh, okay.
The Commission's report essentially says a couple of things. One of those things is that it is the people themselves who will inform change.
Okay.
It is us who determine what kind of a future we want, no? And that also...
So human beings should be pivotal.
Human beings should be informing that change, in leading that change and shaping that change.
Okay.
Obviously we want to all collectively take advantage of new technologies, but we also have to be conscious of the many million young people, for example, who come to the labor market every year. How are they going to be able to get to gainful employment?
So what recommendation the Commission put forward?
Well, basically it said that we all have to come together under 3 rubrics of work. One of them is essentially training and capacity building and looking at how to transform from, let's say, education to jobs, and how to invest in lifelong investments in terms of learning.
Okay.
That's one thing. The other thing is to continue to think about employment through a prism of sustainable employment.
Okay.
In order to...
That is also part of sustainable development growth.
Absolutely.
SDGs.
We have SDGs. There's one on decent work and employment. A very, very central one, SDG 8. So the Commission report is saying we don't just create any kind of jobs. We have to create quality jobs and jobs that will be able to sustain dignified type of work. So these are a couple of things that came out from the...
That also ensures the sustainable economic growth.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So I mean, for example, if you take Bangladesh, I mean, there's a lot of investments in terms of manufacturing-led growth. There's special economic zones, there's export processing zones, there's all of that. But there's also an attempt to diversify, to have tourism and services sector grow, to have IT sector grow. All of that is very, very commendable and, of course, very important. But it's also important to look into other growth of or growth avenues for jobs, such as SMEs, enterprise, rural development, rural growth, and also informal economy. Because so many people in Bangladesh still they work in informal economy. So growth can also come from promoting quality type of jobs in informal economy.
Is that the ILO only advises the particular government, concerned government, to develop all those areas, or you also actively involved to participate in the process of development in these sectors?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, we work often with the government, with the employers, you know, the private sector and employers organizations, and also with trade unions and workers organizations, because they actually constitute the ILO.
Yeah.
You know, they are us, we are them in that sense.
Yes,
you know, we are at their service. At the same time,
so you promote the dialogue? We
promote the dialogue, and we also promote the capacities and technical knowledge on how to go about addressing these changes. But we also have demonstration and pilot programs, often with the government and trade unions and employers, to sort of show how it can be done. And I give you one example, apprenticeships. We believe that, for example, through vocational and skills training, it is very important to get the young people quickly to the jobs, no? Not to be idle or not to just be in school, but to be able to get the flavor of the labor market as part of the training or immediately after the training. So apprenticeships, for example, have a great potential of bringing young men and women in Bangladesh to jobs. And there you need a connectivity between the skills training and the employers. So creating that bridge that the young people can walk through,
building a bridge,
is very important.
But I'm curious to know something about the how you attach importance on the social dialogue. How important is that? My guest today is Mr. Toumo Poutiainen, Country Director in ILO in Bangladesh. Mr. Toumo Poutiainen, we're talking about the recommendation of the Commission. you talked about economic security, equal opportunity, and something related to social justice. And but in terms of the recommendation of the Commission, we know that some of the areas they have been recommending that to invest in decent and sustainable work, you have to invest in people's capacities, capabilities. That is what you also mentioned a little earlier. Investing in institutions of the work. So how you are getting these things done? From ILO, what are the mechanisms, what are the instruments, what are the level of partnership between ILO and the respective government, particularly the government in Bangladesh?
So one way of doing that together with the employers, government and the workers is to provide what we call policy advice and technical advice to government in particular. And for example, currently we are working together with the Ministry of Labour and the Planning Commission on creating a job strategy or an employment strategy that is intended to tie in the various kind of labour programs that could indeed help to create employment. So that's one example of the work that we are doing. Another example of the work that we are doing.
Do you do any survey about the unemployment situation in Bangladesh?
Well, Bangladesh has a labor force survey that is regularly run through the government itself, and it provides quite good statistics on the situation. No?
Have you got any understanding from your side?
Yes, I mean we give technically advice to the.
Say for example that the globally the unemployment number of unemployed people is around 200 million.
Correct. Yes.
Is 200 million. Have you got any figure related to Bangladesh which has been assessed by ILO itself?
Yes. We know, for example, that over 20 million young people are currently unemployed in Bangladesh. And we know that around 37 million people are not in employment, not in training or not in schools. So, it shows that there is a certain challenge that is required to be addressed. And that's why we are putting so much emphasis currently on employment, and particularly youth employment, jobs for young people. That is really the accent going forwards in many ways.
But how to generate employment? How to create more employment in this country? Do you have any recommendation, any suggestions for that?
Yes, I mean the employment policy will do exactly that. It will look at where are the needs, where are the challenges, and what kind of programs could be considered going forwards. I mentioned earlier that one of the stated policies of the government is manufacturing-led growth. So in order for factories, for investors, for special economic zones, for instance, to be running well, you need young people who are qualified and trained. But that cannot be the only answer. Much of the employment actually globally and even in Bangladesh is generated from small businesses. Small businesses employ people. So how to create more small and medium enterprises, how to help them to grow, that they can actually lead into job-rich growth. These are a couple of avenues going forward. I talked about the services sector, hotel sector, tourism sector. These are all growth areas where investments are needed so that more people can be employed, and often young people with language skills, with life skills, with technical skills. So it's quite important to tie these things together.
Do you see remarkable progress or remarkable significant investment or attention in this third sector, what you have mentioned?
Yes, I see quite a lot of investment, but what we see as a challenge going forward is how to tie the modernization of skills and vocational training with the labor market needs. And how to...
Is that adequate?
I think more needs to be done. More effort and focus needs to be done in terms of connecting the dots between the supply.
Who else can take part to impart more training, more knowledge, apart from ILO support programs? What are the organizations who can come forward to impart more knowledge and training and research in this sector?
It's good of you to ask that question, because I think it's a very important one. We think that private sector and professional associations are key. They need to connect to the supply side, to the training and skills institutions, and more mentoring, more business development, more sort of linkages and bridges between the two will create the kind of avenues for young people to be employed. And this is a business need. this is a business need for growth. No?
Yeah.
If you have a business and you want to grow, you want to be sure that you have the right kind of men and women working for you,
yes,
with the right kind of skills. No?
Sure.
So I think that connectivity needs to be more organized and more serviced in many ways. That will go a long way.
We know that ILO have been promoting social dialogue. Why this is so important?
Well, social dialogue,
how would it affect the working environment and the overall situation?
Yes. Social dialogue is a foundational pillar of ILO, and we believe quite strongly that having dialogue at the level of the workplace, no matter what workplace, it can be a factory, it can be a studio like we have here, it can be any workplace. It's quite important that the workers and the employers have a discussion ongoing about issues of common concern. And in that way, you can avoid problems, big and small, and you can avoid like work stoppages, productivity issues. You know, it's a recipe for good industrial relations and good relationships generally between workers and employers. That's why social dialogue is so essential.
How many, in terms of participation, how many organizations, I mean, are you convinced that increasing number of organizations are subscribing the recipe of social dialogue to have the kind of growth they are expecting or they are envisioning at? Do they think that is important and very critical for them to follow this course, social dialogue?
We hope to believe that increasingly so. I mean, the social dialogue is a relatively novel concept in Bangladesh in that sense. But and
ILO also have been working with different countries like Sweden to promote social dialogue in Bangladesh.
Yes, I mean, this is many countries, developmental partners, they promote the idea of having social dialogue mechanisms and having this kind of relationships, particularly between representative organizations, such as trade unions and employee organizations.
You have been talking about the recommendation of the Commission. So, after evaluating all the recommendations, what are the ILO's call to action?
So we here in Bangladesh, we will continue to propose series of discussions to bring the Global Commission's findings and recommendations to the local context. Because it cannot be that globally somebody dictates what might need to happen in Bangladesh. It has to be the government, the academics, the workers themselves, the young people, the employers. They have to come together and chart the way to take advantage of the opportunities of change and also address the challenges of change, because the world is changing very quickly and rapidly because of these technological changes, and also the global environment of competition in terms of, let's say, businesses and globalization is changing fast. So it's quite important that the discussions happen here and they take into account the changing environment and find local recipes to address these issues with one thing in mind. Creating jobs for young people, young men and women, and not just any kind of jobs, I repeat that, quality, decent jobs that people can enjoy because they know that they're safe and they have rights and responsibilities and will be able to maintain their lives dignified manner going forward.
Mr. Toumo Poutiainen, you were talking about the importance of having dialogue, having discussion for quality and decent, creating environment for quality and decent work, for ensuring sustainable economic growth for a country like Bangladesh. But after joining in Dhaka office, how far have you been able to make progress in terms of having dialogue between the stakeholders? What is the progress? Can you share about?
Well, we've been working for long here in Bangladesh with trade unions, with employee organizations and with the government to facilitate and to support what we call social dialogue institutions. So there's a national level social dialogue institutions called National Tripartite Consultative Committees. And then there are sectorial discussions, particularly
like RMG sector.
Like RMG sector, for instance, which is, as we know, sometimes a bit turbulent. No? So it's very important that these mechanisms of social dialogue are continuously utilized. And the reason for that is that you should not only have a discussion when there's a problem. You should have a discussion ongoing basis. Because social dialogue is not just for problem solving in terms of individual problem.
Yeah.
It's also for raising issues of mutual concern. Let's take the issue of future of work, automation,
yes,
but also occupational safety and health. Also maybe skills development, you know, what kind of skills development, what kind of mechanisms. So you need to have a process where the employers and the trade unions and the government can debate, can discuss, and have a common direction going forward.
Yeah.
That's what the essence of social dialogue is, and the value of social dialogue is.
But when you talk about the future of work, do you think we have significant reason to be concerned about the nature of future of work when the huge amount of automation is going on, or artificial intelligence also in place, and robotic technology is coming out every day? So do you think this poses a remarkable threat for the countries like Bangladesh?
Well,
because we have a huge population, 160 million people, and increasing demand for employment in this country, and the organizations are also increasingly remarkably looking at the automation or artificial intelligence to run their business or their work. Do you think this will pose a threat for us?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. It is us people who inform change.
Okay.
So it is important that the stakeholders here in Bangladesh take a look at the pace of change, at the risks, but also the opportunities.
Okay.
When some jobs may go away, some new jobs may come from behind. No?
Yeah.
So it's not a zero-sum game in that way. It's not only replacement or loss. You also have new job opportunities coming forward. But one needs to be able to predict. One needs to be able to prepare. And that's why it's the policymakers who need to think about this. It's the investors and the businessmen and women who need to think about this. But it's also those who are interested and involved in creating the skills and vocational training and education systems. Because if jobs are changing, then it is now that the young people need to be trained to be able to work that work. No? So it's anticipation, dialogue, and not looking at it only as a threat, but also as an opportunity.
So creating decent and quality employment in our country, in Bangladesh, if you, as a professional, senior professional from ILO, how do you assess the strength or weakness of Bangladesh or opportunities of Bangladesh?
Well, I think the greatest opportunity of Bangladesh, it is indeed its young people. It's the fact that with such a pool of 2 million labor market entrants, there's going to be a lot of capacity to innovate, to cherish and to be able to help to grow into young businessmen and women. Not everybody will be a young businessman or a woman, no? Or not everybody will be an innovator. Not everybody will have a high-level skilled job. But there's a significant pool of mental, intellectual resources available for Bangladesh to grow. It is these people who will chart the future of Bangladesh. It is not you and me in that sense.
Do you think that we have been nurturing, we have been caring, we have been sunshining this huge pool of intellectual resources?
I think there's a lot of effort on it, and that effort must, going forwards, must come to fruition. No? So obviously academic institutions, universities, vocational training schools, having these mentorship processes, that those who have made it will also share and help others to make it. All these are very important.
So educational institutions and also the vocational training institutes are playing very important role in this context.
They are, and also the private sector, because they have resources, they have ideas, they have you know, the ability to scale up innovation when it's available. So I don't worry for Bangladesh in terms of its opportunities. No, and the country is growing in terms of economic space. No, I mean there's a 2-digit growth. You know, looking forwards.
Yeah.
So the question is more how to share. How to be able to indeed address inequalities, maybe regionally, geographically, and also make sure that in a way all the people in Bangladesh are able to share in that growth.
So I mean, this is when you talk about inequality. So and also the question of equal opportunity. Is there any survey that region-wise or area-wise that I mean, inequalities is growing in certain region, or opportunities are equal in the areas, different part of the countries?
I mean, generally, globally, inequality has been growing. I mean, this is globally acknowledged, that those who are rich get richer, and those who are poor remain poorer.
The general perception among us that the gap between rich and poor is by and large growing, mounting in Bangladesh.
It is relatively large, but of course there is a growing middle income class in Bangladesh. So going back to what we have been discussing, going back to the issue that there has to be more investment in shared sort of development and more people getting to the labor market, that is the recipe for breaching these inequalities. But I want to say one thing about inequalities. One of the important things in Bangladesh is to promote gender equality, to be able to promote more participation of women into the labor market. Currently, I believe the women's participation rate in labor market is something like 36, while for men it's something like 56 or so. So there's a big potential for more women to enter the labor market. And I think Bangladesh needs that in order for it to be able to grow into a middle income country, and in order to be able to sustain growth, and also to reach these SDGs, which are set as targets.
Exactly.
So it's very important to continue to focus growth in such a manner that particularly women are also able to participate in that process.
How are dealing with child labor issue in Bangladesh? Are you convinced that this is declining, the level of child labor?
Well, the latest research that comes from the surveys indicates that there is still something like 1.7 million child laborers in Bangladesh, and a vast majority of those are in what we call hazardous child labor. We know that the government has taken initiatives, mega programs to address hazardous child labor, but it does remain a concern. And one way, and maybe one of the only ways to actually eliminate and to address child labor is to strengthen generally education system. Young people should be in schools. If they're not in school to the mandatory age of schooling, then they should be in training. They should not enter labor market at too early a stage. And much of the child labor we find or observe is in informal sectors. So also advocacy, public advocacy, awareness. And going back to what we discussed, more investment in jobs and economic development will also help to address child labor in general.
From home and abroad?
From both.
From both. And are you enjoying your work in Bangladesh?
Absolutely.
What are the challenges you are facing as a country director?
Well, challenges, I don't know. I take all the challenges as opportunities in that sense. There's many issues related to work here in Bangladesh. But people are committed to change. People know that it is important to address these issues. And when we talk to the workers, when we talk to the employers or the government, sometimes it's tough, but we are aiming those discussions on finding common solutions going forward. That is what makes my life in Bangladesh tough but easy at the same time, because I can enjoy that. I can enjoy seeing the solutions come from these discussions going forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toumo Poutiainen, for joining me on Frankly Speaking.
I enjoyed this very much.
Thank you very much. Dear viewers, that was my conversation with the country director of ILO in Bangladesh, Mr. Toumo Poutiainen. Yes, we heard that ILO's position. ILO says the need for action is urgent to ensure sustainable growth, and there is an imbalance between the level of change underway in the world work and our level of preparedness. So ILO recommend all countries, including Bangladesh, to create national strategies on the future of work, taking into account their own circumstances, and ILO country director look forward to seeing significant improvement in the areas they are seriously dealing with in Bangladesh. Thank you very much for watching this show, and we invite you to watch our next episode. Until then, do take care. Goodbye.